Hello and good day, ladies and gentlemen. It is time to keep reading about Minli. Jay Patel, you showed up? What's up, Jay? Oh my gosh, did you watch yesterday's? Do you know who Minli is? Do you know who the fam is? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you're here. Representing Gwyn Oaks today. I love it. Well, actually, Five Forks at this point. But Jay, good to see you, brother. It is wonderful to see you. Let us get ourselves ready. Remember your verbal to visual notebook. It's always a really good idea. Keep a record of being active during the listening today. And welcome. I'm hoping that maybe it is Kate and Anya who have just shown up, representing. And let us remind ourselves of this idea. Now, check this out and see if there's anything that you remember. Let's see. I see a mountain. I see the village up top. I see kind of a river from Olympia. I see the sun coming out, drying out the land that Jade Dragon kind of wished for. I'm still kind of wondering what these peanuts are, though. I'm trying to figure out if those might be maybe the dragons giving water to the people, 2 coins. I'm thinking that maybe there's a goldfish or something like that down here. And all of this idea. Now, what it doesn't have is the idea of the old man of the moon. You remember what special thing he has? He's got the giant book that tells all. He connects people through red thread. And we also heard, let's see, what else do we hear? Do we hear anything else? Can't remember. Well, anyway. Oh, that's right. Minli bought a goldfish, right? With one of her 2 coins. And Ma couldn't believe that she had spent money on something as strange as a goldfish, but Minli had total hope that fortune would follow this goldfish. So we are at chapter 4. Are you ready to go? I'm wearing my special Life's a Garden Dig It shirt. That's called a pun. One of the things that I was thinking about, there haven't been a whole lot of puns in this work recently, but there have been a lot of similes. Remember, I keep doing this. Pay attention to when I do that today. The other thing that I want to keep everybody's mind on is, have you noticed how Grace Lynn, author of Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, how she uses color? Lots and lots of color. There's a lot of difference between people and how the fruitless mountain people were covered in mud, brown, dark. It wasn't a whole lot of happiness. And all of the dragons had a special color except for Long, which was kind of an interesting name for one of the dragons, and the river, the goldfish. There's so many things. And so as we dig into the story today, starting with chapter 4, we leave with Ma and Ba at the table, Minli questioning whether she had made a good decision or not. And this was the important piece at the end of chapter 3. Minli stared down at her rice bowl. The few white grains left sat like precious pearls at the bottom of her bowl. Ba patted her arm. "Eat all your rice, daughter," he said. And with his shaking hands, he scooped the last of his own rice to feed the fish. Chapter 4. This is what we get. Giving us that little shot right there. I'm going to assume that might be Minli, but there seems to be water in front of her. That night, Minli could not sleep. Ma's words echoed in her ears, and when she closed her eyes, she saw Ba's hand, shaking from hard work, feeding the goldfish. Ma's right, Minli thought to herself. The goldfish is just another mouth to feed. I can't let Ba feed the goldfish. Ma and Ba work so hard for every grain of rice. Ba shouldn't have to feed the goldfish too. I wanted to pause for a second. You remember when we were reading Miraculous Journey, and all of a sudden we started seeing Edward Tulane starting to think, and what happened to the print in the book? You remember? It looks a little bit like that right there, right? Look at all of those italicized words. Do you remember what that always meant? Always meant that it's coming from the thinking part of somebody talking. So if anybody ever thinks that you're crazy because you talk to yourself, you're not crazy. Or at least you're not crazy in my book. Anyway, so that was all considered thinking in that part for Minli. So Ba shouldn't have to feed the goldfish too. Minli slipped quietly out of her bed and crept to the table where the goldfish was. They stared at each other, and Minli knew what she had to do. Quickly slipping on her shoes and jacket, she took the goldfish and left the house. Where's she going? It was late. The village was quietly asleep, and the stars above filled the sky like spilled salt on dried seaweed. Minli's footsteps seemed to hush the night as she made her way toward the Jade River. I'm sorry I can't keep you, Minli whispered. I hope you will be all right in the river. And with those words, she emptied the bowl into the water. For a moment, the fish seemed shocked and was still, like a flickering flame on a match. Then it wiggled in the water and swam in circles, a joyful fire twirling in the water. Oh, we haven't had this one yet. What just happened? The fish was still for a moment, like a flickering flame on a match. Then it wiggled in the water and swam in circles, a joyful fire twirling in the water. Goldfish turned into fire? That's called a metaphor. You've just turned something into something else, and so it's a circle of fire in the water. It's not really, it's just the goldfish. Just a beautiful figurative way to say it. Minli watched it and sighed. As the sound faded into the night, Minli realized it was an echo of her mother's impatient, frustrated noise. Ma will never stop sighing unless our fortune changes. But how will it ever change? Minli asked ruefully. I guess that is just another question for the old man of the moon. Too bad no one knows how to get to Never-Ending Mountain, to ask him anything. The fish stopped swimming, and looked up at Minli. I know where it is, it said. The female voice was high and soft, like the wind whistling through the reeds of the water. Minli stared. Did you say something? She asked. Yes, the fish said. I know how you can get to Never-Ending Mountain, and ask the old man of the moon a question. You're a talking fish? Minli asked, her words tumbling into each other with excitement. How can you talk? Most fish talk, the fish said. If you are willing to listen, one, of course, must want to hear. I do, Minli said, enthralled and eager. This was just like one of Ba's stories. She bubbled with excitement. How do you know the way to Never-Ending Mountain? I've swum all the oceans and rivers except for one, the fish said, and on my way to the last, the goldfish man caught me. I despaired in his cart, for I've seen and learned much of the world, including the way to Never-Ending Mountain. Since you have set me free, I will tell you. You've swum all the oceans and rivers? Minli asked. The question spilled like overflowing water. Which river haven't you seen? Why have you traveled so much? Where is Never-Ending Mountain? When did... This river is the one river I have not swum, the fish interrupted, and I have waited a long time to see it. So I would like to start as soon as possible. You can ask the old man of the moon all your other questions. Let me tell you the way so I can be off. Minli nodded and asked no more. She realized she was having a conversation with a goldfish, which was very unusual. So she decided to listen. Now I know what that picture was all about. And this is what we get next. Chapter 5. Some people like to separate their pictures from chapter to chapter. So that's why I like to take a little bit of a moment. So if you want to write chapter 5 or maybe a 5 to represent it. The next morning, Minli felt as if her head was spinning with thoughts and plans. She was so busy thinking and plotting that she barely noticed her parents nodding sadly at each other when they saw the empty fishbowl. And in the fields, when Minli worked as if in a daze, her parents said nothing about her slow and messy planting. When the sun began to set and Minli went home to make dinner, She quickly washed and made the rice. Then she set the table for 2 people, sat down, and wrote this note. Dear Ma and Ba, I am going to Never-Ending Mountain to ask the old man of the moon how I can change our fortune. I might be away for many days, but don't worry. I will be fine. When I come back, we will be able to fill our house with gold and jade. Love, your obedient daughter, Minli. The obedient part isn't completely true, Minli thought to herself, and she knew her parents would not be happy to find her gone. But it's not false either. They didn't say I couldn't go, so I'm not being disobedient. Pause. What do you think? Is she being disobedient? Or is she being willful? Does she have a reason? Does she have a plan? Still, Minli knew that wasn't entirely right either, but she shook away her uneasy feelings and prepared for her journey. On a blanket, she put a needle, a pair of chopsticks, her white rabbit rice bowl, a small piece of dried bamboo, a hollow gourd full of water, a small knife, a fish net, some uncooked rice, a large pot, and the one remaining copper coin. Then she wrapped her blanket into a bag, tied it on her back, and took a last look at the shabby house. Through the window, Fruitless Mountain stood like a shadow, but Minli closed her eyes and imagined the house shimmering with gold and the mountain jade green with trees, and smiled. Then she opened the door and left. Chapter 6. There's her pack. Leaving town. Is that a bowl in her hand? Chapter 6. As Minli left the house, she was afraid some of her neighbors would stop her or ask where she was going. She felt she must look mysterious with a large bag on her back and full of excitement, but no one noticed her. The neighbors kept sweeping their doorways, hanging their laundry, and preparing dinner. A boy and girl continued their fight over a pretend feast of mud. When the mother called them for dinner, both refused to move, each clinging to their dishes of wet dirt. Minli had to smile at their foolishness. So Minli walked right out of the village without causing a second glance. At the edge of the village, she turned toward Fruitless Mountain. At the bottom of the mountain, she unwrapped her blanket and took out her knife, needle, rice bowl, bamboo piece, and jug of water. Then, trying to remember all the goldfish's instructions, she cracked off a small bit of stone and rubbed it up and down the needle 99 times before tossing it back to the ground. Then she filled her rice bowl halfway with water and let the bamboo float in it. After that, she picked up the needle and looked at the white rabbit on her bowl. Okay, she said to the jumping rabbit, lead the way. As she placed the needle onto the bamboo, like magic, the needle spun around. Minli smiled. It's like a magnet. Thank you, Minli said again to the painted rabbit. Now, I'll follow where you want me to go. Minli packed up her things and, carefully holding the bowl in her hand, walked in the direction of the needle, past Fruitless Mountain. Goodbye, Jade Dragon. Goodbye, Jade Dragon, Minli said as she left. When I come back, I will know how to make you happy again. Minli walked and walked, and the stony land slowly turned into forest. Even when the moon was high in the sky, she continued. I want to make sure I walk far enough that if Ma and Ba begin to look for me, they can't find me, Minli said to herself. The fallen leaves made a soft carpet for her feet, and the night birds flew into the sky as she passed. Only when the sky lightened to gray and the sun began to peek over the horizon did Minli sit down and rest against a tall tree. She had traveled deep into the forest, far from her village and her home. She was so tired that she quickly fell asleep. I don't know, going into the woods is kind of a spooky thing for me. I don't know, she must have been really tired because when I have gone out and camped by myself in the woods, my mind starts acting up, starts imagining these things that are in the dark. Ever have that happen? Ever stood on the edge of a forest and kind of looked out there and wondered what might be out there? Me too. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. We see two people with a stick heading off, maybe above the village. I'm going to infer that that's probably her parents. Probably. Either that or she's going to come down with somebody else into a new town and find out where she finds him. So, chapter 7. The sun had set and the moon was just beginning to rise in the sky when Ma and Ba returned home from the fields. Even though they could smell the steam from the rice cooking, they noticed the house was strangely dark and quiet. Why is Minli sitting in the darkness? Ma wondered as they approached the house. Perhaps she is sad about giving up her goldfish, Ba said, as he shook his head. Can our fortune be any poorer? Ma sighed. We cannot even feed a goldfish for our daughter. But as Minli's parents entered the house and read her note, Ma made a noise like a shrieking cat. I spoke too soon, Ma cried. Our fortune is now the worst, for our only daughter, is gone. Quiet, quiet, wife. Ba hushed her. If we move quickly, we can find her and bring her back home. Ba hurriedly took out his cloth sack and gathered blankets and filled an empty bottle with water. She has had almost half a day to travel ahead, he said. It might take us some time to find her. Ma watched him and then began to pack the cooked rice into a traveling box, but she continued to weep. It's all the stories you told her, Ma sobbed. She believed them, and now she's looking for fairy tales. Her words cut into Ba like slices from a knife, but even though his face was pained, he said nothing and continued to pack. His hands trembled as he tied the bag closed, but they were gentle when he put them on Ma's shoulders. Let us go, he said. As they left the house, many of their neighbors poked their heads out the door. They had heard Ma's scream, though the thin walls of their closely spaced houses, and wanted to know, through the thin walls of their closely spaced houses, and wanted to know what had happened. When Ma and Ba told them, it seemed as if the whole village poured out from their homes. Never-ending mountain? The old man of the moon? Changing your fortune? The neighbors said. You better go find her or else she'll never return. Foolish Minli, she is trying to do the impossible. Each villager pointed and nodded toward the direction that they had seen Minli last. Some had seen her heading home, others toward the rice fields. But finally, a small boy was heard. Minli left toward Fruitless Mountain, he said. I saw her with her pack. She went that way. So with the villagers waving them goodbye, Ma and Ba walked toward Fruitless Mountain, their dark shadows trailing behind them in the moonlight. But when they reached the mountain, they looked at each other uncertainly. Where did she go from here? Ba wondered, and lit the lantern in his hand. The soft light seemed to warm the air and soften the growing darkness. Here, Ma pointed out. She pointed to the ground. There are footprints going into the woods. Maybe they're Minli's. Ba looked at the footprints. There was another mark accompanying them, a long pulling line. Ba pointed at them. But what is that? He wondered. Maybe Minli was dragging a walking stick. Ma said, the footprints could be hers. Ba looked at the footprints. They seemed small and nimble. Perhaps they are hers. Ba said, let us follow. And so they did. What was the line? What was following that? It felt like a line following. Now we have a young girl. We have some strange mountains, and we have some forest, and we have the bowl again. Minli woke up when the sun was high in the sky and burning with light. Even the shade of the forest, Minli's black head burned hot. As she woke up, she looked at her jug of water. Since she had used some of it for her compass and had drunk some during her night walk, it was only half full. She sipped it and tried not to think about Ma and Ba finding her note. I hope they understand, Minli said to herself, shifting the weight of the water jug on her shoulders uncomfortably. Have you ever written a note like that? Have you ever written a note to your parents, left it on a counter and said, I'm leaving. I'm on an adventure. Have you ever done that? Oh my gosh, one of my most incredible stories. Yes, I've done that. I think 3 times. Do twice as a kid and once as an adult. Amazing. Oh my gosh. I can't tell it now because we're in the middle of a book, but that will have to come from storytelling time. Minli decided to walk west again. A couple of moments later, she sipped her jug again. She tried to drink sparingly, but even though the leaves of the trees, the yellow sun glared down at her. Soon her empty jug was bouncing against her arm when she heard a faint noise running through the trees. That's water trickling, she said to herself as she turned toward the sound. There's water here somewhere. Soon she noticed a small stream running with clear, sparkling water. She eagerly bent down to drink and fill her jug, but as soon as Minli tasted the water, she spit it out. Salt water, Minli exclaimed. This water is salty. As she sat back, Minli began to wonder, how is this stream salty? I am far from the ocean. This is very strange. And unable to contain her curiosity, Minli forgot all about her thirst and began to follow the water. The stream widened and deepened, becoming more of a river than a stream. Just as Minli began to think that she should return to her journey, she began to hear deep moans that gently shook the earth. Who's there? Minli shouted. Help, a muffled voice whimpered. Can you help me? I'm coming, Minli called. She quickly put down her compass on the side of the water and waded in. The water was warm, like bath water, and clear as glass. Minli could see her feet and all the stones and leaves at the bottom of the stream. As she moved toward the voice, the water rose higher and higher to her knees and then almost to her neck. Are you still there? The voice asked plaintively. Please help me. I'm coming, Minli called again. She took a deep breath and dove toward the voice. The salt water stung her eyes, so she closed them tightly until she broke through the surface. When she finally opened her eyes, Minli almost sank back underwater with shock, because there, in front of her, was a dragon. Gotta read another chapter, right? One more chapter. Chapter 9. Underneath the moon, shadows of the trees. Ma stumbled with weariness. Ba did not know how long they had been walking. With every step, he peered at the ground, the light flickering as the lantern swayed in his hand. The forest was full of shapes and shadows, and only barely could he see the faint footprints on the ground. It was like searching for a wrinkle in a flower petal. As Ma tripped, he steadied her with his arm. We should rest, Ba said. Ma shook her head and pulled away angrily. We must keep going. We have to find Minli. But you're tired, Ba said. And I am too. We can rest, and afterward we will be able to continue faster. I am not tired, Ma said fiercely. Her irritation seemed to give her energy. If you are tired, you can rest, but I will continue to look for our daughter. We should stay together, Ba said quietly. If you wish to stay with me, Ma said, then you will have to keep going. Ba sighed and took out another candle for the lantern. The light from the lamp kept away the forest animals, but it could do nothing for Ma's fury. Her resentment seemed to darken with the fading moon. But as they walked, the morning bloomed in the distance. Its light slowly filtered over Ma and Ba through the veil of tree branches so that he could finally blow out the candle in his lantern. He looked at Ma and could see that her bitterness was only sharper in the softening sky. If Minli stopped to rest, Ba said, we may catch up with her soon. When we find her, Ma said, she must know that she is never to do this again, never. Now, wife, Ba said, Minli did not leave to cause us harm. No, Ma said, her words cracking the air around her. She left to find a fairy tale, never-ending mountain, and are not foolish, Ba said again in his quiet way. Says you, Ma said, because you are the one who filled her with them, making her believe that she could change miserable fortunes with an impossible story. Ridiculous! Yes, Ba said sadly, it's impossible, but it's not ridiculous. Ma opened her mouth again, but stopped. For up ahead, there was a noise of breaking branches. It was the sound of someone pushing through the forest. Ma and Ba looked at each other. Minli, Ma said. Forgetting their fatigue and frustration, Ma and Ba began to run through the woods. Ma ignored the branches that scratched her, and Ba let his hat fall to the ground as they rushed toward the unseen person. Minli! They called, Minli! But as they burst upon the figure ahead, they stopped in shock. It was not Minli. Instead, Ma and Ba stared open-mouthed at the goldfish man. I can't keep reading. I can't. I promise 25 minutes. I promise to read up until this point. This is where we were supposed to finish yesterday. So unfortunately, we have met the end of our reading today. Oh my gosh. Minli goes off in search of never-ending mountain by the direction of a goldfish. She hears a need for help. In the woods, she goes and searches. Always, it's a dragon in capital letters. Ma and Ba have raced through the woods trying to find, spent all night looking for Minli, and somehow runs into the goldfish man in the middle of the forest. It's daytime. It's not night anymore. What will happen? You're going to have to come back tomorrow. Isn't that fun? I love this part. I love this part. Don't hate me because I stopped. But I'm going to tell you, it is still a really, really pretty day out, no matter where you're at. So go out and do something awesome. Go out and be outside. Remember, you only get a certain amount of days off. School's happening soon. I think we start a week from today. So we've got a lot of book to read. I'll see you tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Figure that out for yourself. If you need to, go take a look at the timelines on Google, or you can ask your family to do that. But you better leave a note behind if you ever head out to Never-Ending Mountain. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. I'll miss you until tomorrow. And I love you. I get out of here.